What is man that you are mindful of him, Lord? You made the stars, the moon, the sun, and all the world that came to be at your command. What is man? What has he done? And you crown him with glory and honor, gave him dominion over land and sea and air. And you store up inheritance in heaven. What is man that you should care? What is man, Lord, that you should care?
And you crown him with glory and honor, gave him dominion over land and sea and air. And you store up inheritance in heaven. What is man that you should care? What is man, Lord, that you should care?
What is man that you would let him live at all, who shed the blood of his own kind, and in his pride goes on his way down to your call? What is man? Why do you mind? And you crown him with glory and honor, gave him dominion over land and sea and air. And you store up inheritance in heaven. What is man that you should care? What is man, Lord, that you should care?
I know not why God's wondrous grace to me hath made known, nor why unworthy Christ in love redeemed me for his own. But I know I have believed and am persuaded that he is able to keep that which I committed unto him against that day. I know not how this saving faith to me he did impart, nor how believing in his word brought peace within my heart. But I know whom I have believed and am persuaded that he is able to keep that which I've committed unto him against that day. I know not when my Lord may come at night or noonday fair, nor
comes to us this morning from Matthew chapter 9. Continuing the series on the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 9, verses 18 through 34. While he was saying this, a synagogue leader came and knelt before him and said, "My daughter has just died. But come and put your hand on her, and she will live." Jesus got up with him, and so did his disciples. Just then, a woman who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years came up behind him and touched the edge of his robe, his cloak. She said to herself, "If only I touch his cloak, I will be healed." Jesus turned and saw her. "Take heart, daughter," he said. "Your faith has healed you." And the woman was healed at that moment. When Jesus entered the synagogue leader's house and saw the noisy crowd and the people playing pipes, he said, "Go away. This girl is not dead, but asleep." But they laughed at him. After the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took the girl by the hand, and she got up. News of this spread through all the region. As Jesus went on from there, 2 blind men followed him, calling out, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." When he had gone indoors, the blind men came to him, and he asked them, "Do you believe that I'm able to do this?" They said, "Yes, Lord." Then he touched their eyes and said, "According to your faith, let it be done to you." And their sight was restored. Jesus warned them sternly, "See that no one knows about this." But they went out and spread the news about him all over the region. While they were going out, a man who was demon-possessed and could not talk was brought to Jesus. And when the demon was driven out, the man who had been mute spoke. The crowd was amazed and said, "Nothing like this has ever happened in Israel." But the Pharisees said, "It is by the prince of demons that he drives out demons." This is the word of the Lord. So we're in Matthew's chapters 8 and 9, and we've talked about this for the last several weeks, that there's 2 major themes here. The ultimate power of the Messiah as he goes about healing and restoring people to their wholeness, and radical discipleship as he's beginning to pass off his power and authority to the disciples so that they, in a chapter or 2, will be actually the ones that are doing the work. And today, the emphasis really is on both. Ultimate power. That's probably my fault.
And if it's dead batteries, I'll turn on the phone.
It shouldn't be dead. Oh, hey, there we go. Sorry. How about now? Can you hear me now? Okay. So first, it's ultimate power, where Jesus is showing what the Messiah will do, what the kingdom will be like when it comes. Like, there's no more pain, there's no more hurt, there's no more tears in the kingdom of Jesus, the kingdom of God. And as Jesus enters into the world, that's what happens. Blind men receive their sight. People who can't talk or are tormented by demons are set free. A woman, a daughter of a Pharisee, goes from death to life. And the Pharisee himself, who is a part of this group that appears to be an enemy of the kingdom, is blessed by the kingdom. And so you see with Jesus the ultimate power and authority of what the kingdom will do ultimately. But now, in this moment, it's kind of like a little embassy in a foreign country. Jesus is the embassy. Jesus is the kingdom. And this is what it looks like while the chaos surrounds him. But it's also this movement toward, in this particular section, radical discipleship. We're going to see how Jesus is beginning to include the disciples just a little bit closer. Previously, Jesus is doing the miracles. There's really no talk of the disciples' presence. We know that they're there because they're eyewitnesses, but the text doesn't say that they're there. Here is the first time we're going to see where Jesus' disciples are ushered into this moment where he raises the dead to life. I think in part for their edification and training, so that when they are faced with similar things, they'll know how and what to do, what the kingdom looks like. There's this saying, things aren't caught. They're not taught as much as they're caught, right? Like, you can teach your kids something, but your kids are ultimately going to do what you do, right? So like if I say, hey, you shouldn't swear, but then occasionally like I swear, my kids are going to learn that it's okay that you swear, right? So like I try not to swear, but sometimes I swear. And so my kids are going to be like, oh, well, he told us not to swear, but sometimes he swears. So most likely they're going to grow up and occasionally swear, right? It's just like, this is natural. It's like, so in this, Jesus has taught the disciples everything that they need to know. I mean, he laid out what the kingdom is like on the mountaintop, on the Sermon on the Mount. But here, they're going to see it firsthand. And there's nothing like firsthand experience to learn and know what it is that the kingdom is going to look like. And so I'm saying it because it's true. This is what Jesus is doing with his disciples, and they're going to see firsthand exactly what it is, not just to witness the works, but to begin to do them. And so what an amazing thing. The next section in after 8 and 9 is 9 through 11, and we're going to 9, 10, right? 8, 9, 10, 11, right? So there's this next section is about guidance for mission. So he's going to begin to hand off some authority, and then he's going to talk to them over the next several chapters about how you do this. This is what it's going to be like to experience this. Don't be confused. Don't be afraid, because this is what it's going to be like for you to live out this mission in the world, guys. And I'm telling you in advance so that you know. So it's kind of a neat thing. I'm looking forward to it. There's going to be just a section where Jesus speaks so, I don't know, in with a shepherd's heart, trying to prepare these guys' hearts for what they're going to encounter once they actually start to do the mission of God. And we as disciples can learn from this because, we're it. Until Jesus comes back, we're his disciples. We're the one that are, advancing the mission of God in the world. Right now, we learned about it this morning. What an amazing thing to see the mission of God going forth in Russia. But it's just such a privilege that we get to be a part of extending God's kingdom in the world. So the main point for today, Matthew 9, 18 through 34, we read of 3 powerful miracles, each one fulfilling prophecy and is done in the presence of the disciples for their edification and training. The miracles extend the kingdom of Jesus further, but we'll also see it increases the opposition to the work. And I entitled the message, The Way Through the Chaos. How many of you know that there's plenty of reasons to feel discouraged in the world today? I mean, you can't listen for very long to anything, really, in my opinion. I'm trying to watch basketball, man, and I'm just like, I swear there's like 10 times as many commercials as there used to be. It's just, there's a lot of ways that you could find yourself downhearted or discouraged by the world around us. Maybe relationships that are gone a little sideways, or a sickness that has come into your life that is just wearing you down, or difficulty after difficulty that maybe you're experiencing in your family. But one of the things I see in this passage is that Jesus is experiencing all of these chaotic things around him. He's seeing blindness, a woman bleeding, a mourning family, and he is showing this way through. I mean, he's right in the thick of it, and he's just showing the way through for his disciples and for us. And I just found a lot of encouragement in reading it. In 18 through 34, there's really 4 main parts. The first is the healing of a woman who's been bleeding for 12 years, the raising of a young girl, the young daughter of a Pharisee, and the healing of 2 blind men. And then finally, at the end, there's an exorcising of a young man who's mute because this demon has affected him so deeply. So let's get into it. The way through the chaos. We see here too that Jesus isn't just showing the way through, but this is what really caught me is amazing. Is that Jesus is he's raising up wayfinders too. Like here he is not just showing us the way through the chaos, but he's now enlisting his disciples to be trained to do the work. And it got me thinking that when Jesus comes back, that he isn't just coming back by himself. That, we have this whole world around us that we're just talking about is kind of chaotic and sometimes difficult to live in. how in the world is Jesus going to fix all of this? Right? How in the world is Jesus going to turn this world and these people back to what he intended? And we know in Peter and other places that first he's going to purify it with fire. He's going to purify creation with fire, but then he's got to rebuild. And certainly he could do that on his own, but one of the things that struck out to me is that he, even now in this work, he's raising up wayfinders, he's raising up healers, he's showing his disciples how to do it. And it struck me, there's a guy I knew, he discipled a guy who discipled me, but he had this vision from God. And it was just an incredible vision because he had a vision in his sleep that Jesus was riding on the white horse, like coming and to restore the world. And this guy had the privilege of riding on a horse behind Jesus, and that they were all riding together to come back, not just to quell evil, destroy the evil, but also to rebuild. And what an incredible thing that even now we get to be trained by God to do the works of good in the world, but then we may be a part of restoring the world to its original goodness. I just think it's amazing and awesome. So Jesus is the way through the chaos. And he starts by restoring a woman's wholeness. This is in verses... starts in verse 18. So we see down just a little bit in verse 20 that Jesus encounters this man, and he's upset about his daughter being, dying. And this woman who is in the crowd with Jesus, last week it was 2 weeks ago, but we talked about the new wineskins where Jesus is at this party with these Pharisees. And Jairus, one of the Pharisees, the tax collectors, they're all at this party, and there's people there that the Pharisees hate, and there's this kind of this disagreement that breaks out. So here we are in this setting, and one of the Pharisees comes over to Jesus. He's like, my daughter has died, and I need your help. And Jesus is beginning to get ready to go to help this guy, and this other woman who's like, she's sitting there in the crowd, and she's like, I've been bleeding. I've been suffering with this disease for 12 years, and I need his help. So just as Jesus is hearing about the death of this girl, this woman who is suffering with this bleeding is like, help me. And you can imagine if she had been suffering for 12 years. And what it says that she was suffering with this bleeding. They think it was like a bleeding from the womb, like a kind of a menstrual sort of thing. And you could just imagine that for 12 years she suffered with this, and it was relentless. There was nothing that she could do about it. And she bled, and she was made ritually unclean because of this. So not only is she dealing with this issue, but that she can't go back and she can't go to temple. She can't do any of the typical things that would make her a part of the religious community that would give her love and support. And so she's got this thing that's going on in her that's creating not just physical suffering, but emotional suffering. And Jesus steps into this, and I just love what he says. So it's said that he had this robe on, and the Jewish people wore these robes, and they had tassels around the edges. And the tassels were to show you, just to kind of remind you, it had a little tassel on it. You could touch it and just remind you of your need to be obedient to God, or to remember a specific passage of the scripture. But this tassel was intended to, be a religious thing. And her faith was like, man, if I could just reach out and touch his tassel, if I could just reach out and touch Jesus' robe, that I would be healed and relieved of all the suffering. And so Jesus turns to her and he says, daughter, after 12 years being on the margins, he says to her, daughter, you're part of our family. You belong. And then he says to her, take heart. So I don't know who's here this morning that needs to hear that word, but take heart. Son, daughter. The word of Jesus to you. Take heart. It's like having courage poured back into you. Like if you're down, you've been suffering for a long time, you're just discouraged. This thing won't let up, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And it just feels like you're trapped in this thing. And Jesus comes to you, and in a word, he says, take heart, your faith has made you well. So I can't promise that Jesus is going to heal you from whatever you're suffering, but I can tell you that his word to you this morning is take heart. So whatever it is that you need courage for, it's my belief that Jesus' word for you is to take heart, that he's there. So he heals this woman of her difficulty, and then he's thrust right back into this chaotic scene. We know from Mark that the guy's name was Jairus, and he was a ruler in the synagogue. And you know, for Jesus to cross this line, I mean, there's a lot of lines in the world today, is there not? But the Pharisees hate Jesus at this point. I mean, hate him. And they're soon going to be planning his death. They're going to plan his murder. And Jesus is this, however he does this, he's this guy that's like, you know what? It's not his group that matters to me. It doesn't matter to me that he's a Pharisee. What matters to me is that he has faith to believe that God is real and that I am the Messiah. So he doesn't decide that, he's like, you know, you're with those guys. I'm not going to touch your family. I'm not even going to come close to your family. You're one of those people. Jesus crosses the line. He goes into his house. He joins in this mourning scene with the family. And this isn't like a Western funeral. You know, the funerals that we go to where people whisper and all the tones are hushed. This is a scene like we haven't really, I don't know if we really, so actually when my grandfather died, this is the closest that I've experienced it. There was one of his buddies, his name was Earl, and Earl was crazy. I played cards with Earl a lot. And he came into my grandfather's funeral, and he just walked in the back of the room, and he screamed out, "Ah!" And he turned around and walked away. But he just needed to get his pain out. And it was like the strangest thing. But in this funeral, people would wail. They would actually hire people to wail at the funeral. And the whole point was that you could get out your grief. And they would hire flute players to play. So this scene isn't like a Western funeral. It is something kind of chaotic and way different for us. So Jesus is entering into this tragic scene of mourning, and the people are crying out in their grief, and Jesus is standing in the house of a Pharisee. You can just imagine just the tension and the chaos and the trouble in that room. And so then he speaks a word. He says to the crowd, "Hey, don't be so heartbroken. The woman isn't dead. She's only asleep." And here's Jesus. He's the Messiah. He's the creator of all things. And they laugh at him. Like, oh, that's silly. What a silly thing to say, Messiah. What a silly thing to say, creator. But they're in this world where they can't really see what's going on. But Jesus knows. And in a moment, he changes their tragedy into hope. And he speaks over this girl, and she rises from the dead. It's the first time we see Jesus speak over someone, and they move from death to life. And that's what's happening for each of us when we place our faith from him. It's not that we go from a pretty good person to a better person to an even better person now that we're going to church and doing all this stuff. We, like this woman, are dead in our sin, and there is nothing that we could do to escape the mourning and the sadness and the difficulty of that situation. We need Jesus to step into our life and speak a word over us and raise us from death to life. And his disciples are with him, and they're witnessing this whole thing. I mean, man, to be a fly on the wall, to be one of these guys. I don't know if anybody had been raised from the dead before in the history of the world. I'm certain that these fishermen hadn't seen it before. And so they're there, and they are seeing for the first time someone rise from the dead. And I mean, to get your mind around it, to be like, someday I'm going to raise somebody from the dead. Someday I'm going to be the healer. I mean, there's no way. They're just getting their mind around these things. But Jesus shows this amazing model, and I've had people show this to me before, but he's just inviting them in to see. I'm going to do this stuff, and you guys don't touch anything. Don't do anything. Just watch me do this, right? But now we're going to see a little bit where he's like, I'm going to do this, and you guys are going to be a little bit closer in, and you're going to actually begin to help me do these things. And so if you're a disciple, you're like, wow. You begin to believe yourself that maybe there's something within me that God could actually use to do this kind of thing in the world. And then Jesus does an even more amazing thing. He's like, you know what? Now you're going to do this, and I'm going to watch you do this. I'm going to help you do it. Sorry. And then after that, Jesus is going to leave entirely. And they're going to do it all. And Jesus is going to watch from in heaven, empowering them, but he's not present for them to do this. And there is a little diagram that I love. It's kind of like a leadership growth kind of thing. So I do, you watch. I do, you help me. You do, I help. And you do, I watch. It's like this slowly, and you know, so much happens in us when we go from like, there's no way I'm ever going to do that, to like, oh, well, maybe I could do that, to, oh my gosh, I'm doing that. And you know where I've seen it, and I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I've seen it in Dana and Wyatt. Like Wyatt going from, man, I'm not so sure, to like, wow, this could happen. And then you're like, wow, this is happening. And watching Dana kind of like empower him and then encourage him and then kind of like, you know, let him go and encourage him again. So I just think that it's awesome. It's the way that Jesus did it with his disciples, and that we too can learn to not only believe for ourselves that we could do something for God, but also train other people to do stuff for God. And that really is the mission of the church, to make disciples, right? And so we see in Jesus this great model of how to do that. It's kind of an interlude. So Jesus is back now, and he has just raised someone from the dead for the first time. And there's got to be just like, I mean, from mourning to euphoria, she's dead, now she's alive, and this crowd, it's sort of like, man, my goodness, this must be just crazy energy around Jesus. And so then these two blind men, they scream out to him, have mercy on us, Son of David. I mean, can you get the scene where it just one chaotic thing after another, one difficult circumstance, one almost impossible circumstance. Now these blind guys are like calling him the Son of David, the Messiah, the one chosen in the line of the King of David. And they're asking him to restore their sight and have mercy on us, Son of David. And Jesus turns to them. Oh no. Here we go again. Here we go. Yeah. Welcome to First Congregation. Oh, Lord, have mercy. It's like a preview. Oh, man, so sorry. So there's this group in Russia. They do some cool stuff. We're going to take some tithes and offerings, special music. Sorry. Bill, you want to sing a song? No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. Getting there. If anybody wanted to volunteer to be in the back with me to help me out with this, that would be awesome. No, I mean like in the future. Thank you. Yes, yes. Right. Sorry. Oh. Thank you guys for your grace. So, these guys are physically blind. They can't see, but still they know that Jesus is the Messiah. And they call out to him. They call him Son of David. They know that this is the one that God had called to bring back the kingdom and to restore all things to wholeness. And they're physically blind, but they can see more than those who could see with their eyes could see. The Pharisees knew everything, could see everything, but they didn't know Jesus is the Messiah. And these guys couldn't see anything. And yet, it's their faith that restores their sight. Jesus turns to them and he says, "Do you believe I can make you see?" And the answer for them was, "Yes, we believe that you're the one that has come, that you can restore us to wholeness and restore our sight." It was their faith that gave them from Jesus what they needed. Now it's important to note here that it's not like the measure of their faith, like that Jesus gives to those that have a lot of faith, but he doesn't give those that have just a little bit of faith. Like, oh, if you have a lot of faith, whoa, bless you, you get all this blessing. Or if you just have a little faith, you just get a little bit of blessing. That's not what Jesus is saying. It's not according to the measure of your faith. It's that if you believe, a lot of people ask stuff from God, but few believe that God will actually do. And I'm one of these people. I'm a cynic. I hate it. But I'm like, I pray, I cry out like, God, will you please do this thing? And like the difference between asking God, because that's what you're supposed to do, and believing that God will actually do something for you it's a big gap. And that's part of our growth as people in faith. And here are these guys, I mean, they just believed not just to ask him, but that they believed that he would do it. And that was what gave them their sight back. So it's their faith that restores their sight. And then he warns them sternly. And the word here is very strong in the Greek. It's like, it's almost violent. Like, do not share this with anyone. Now, again, it's this chaotic scene where like the Pharisees are out to get him. And now the crowd is crazy with energy. And Jesus is like, would you please not share this with anyone? Because this thing's like a powder keg and I need you guys to remain silent. And they're so stoked about what just happened to them. And maybe we would be too. It's like, yo, man, I can see. Like, I'm telling everybody. And so there's this thought where like these guys had faith to believe, but they didn't, that they could be healed, but they didn't have the faith yet to obey. And so Jesus is having this strong word to them, do not do this. And in their energy, in their excitement, they just blow off Jesus' call to obedience after they receive the blessing. And how much of that is like us? We need to be careful that we don't just believe God for the good thing, but that we believe God to obey in the results of that thing. And that is a challenge, but it is our challenge. And so he warns them sternly. They totally disobey. And now the testimony of who Jesus is spreading like wildfire through the region. And then Jesus comes upon this man who he's just now healed these guys, and there's another man, and it says in the text that he was demon possessed. And now we could look at this and be like, oh, this is like superstitious stuff from the first century. But we should look at it and think of it more like these guys were actually savvy in the spirit. They knew the difference between someone who was sick because they were just physically sick, and they knew who was sick because a demon had oppressed this person. And we live like practical atheists in our world, like demons don't exist and they don't actually affect our lives. But we could actually learn from these folks that the demonic is real, and it does oppress people, and it does cause physical sickness, and the Bible testifies to it, and we need to be wiser than we are typically about this stuff. And so maybe what you have is just a physical sickness, and that the doctor is the one that can heal you. But maybe what's going on in your life is spiritual, and that you need to confess your sins so that you can be healed. And this is a real part of the biblical testimony. I'm not making it up. It's there. People are demon possessed and they have physical illnesses because of the demon's oppression of them. And that's real. That's as real today as it was 2,000 years ago. It doesn't mean we go around looking for demons, but it does mean that we should be aware, like the first century folks were, that this is a real part of daily life. So this oppressed man is experiencing the demonic in his life, and he cannot speak. And the folks around him know of this guy. He's a part of their community, and he doesn't come directly to Jesus. It's the faith of the community that brings this guy forward. And so they bring this guy to Jesus, and they're like, would you please help him? We've seen his torment. We've seen his difficulty. He can't even speak because this demon is in his life. And Jesus restores his voice. In an instant, the demon is driven out by the word of Jesus, and the guy restores his voice. He can speak again. And again, the people are just totally amazed by what Jesus is doing. And there's really only two responses here, and we see them. There's amazement. My God, the Messiah has come, and he can do anything he wants if we ask according to his will. Anything that he wants. He can heal blindness. He can heal bleeding. He can heal muteness. He's fulfilling all the prophecies of the Old Testament, and here he is, here and now. And we've never seen anything like this, and it's real. The other one, and I just confess that this can be part of my struggle, is cynicism. Oh, come on, that's whatever. There's a way to explain it. There's got to be a way to explain it. And if we're not careful, we walk this road of unbelief, and even if Jesus was standing before us, we wouldn't believe. And so I had this instance this week, and somebody asked to meet with me. I didn't know who this person was. I looked him up on Facebook because, whatever. And I was like, holy cow, they're from my hometown. And so the person shares this testimony of God gave her a picture of this kindergarten kid. And he had red hair and big glasses, and she said big front teeth, which I was like, well, not that big. But she had a picture of this person who was there was this girl and this kid, and these boys were bringing him over to be with this girl, and she's like, this girl's name was Nicole Brown. I was like, what? And Nicole Brown, silly, stupid stuff, but it was like my first crush in kindergarten. And these boys were bringing me over, and she's like, pray for Matt Fleming. There's no way. She doesn't know who I am, where I am, and so she starts to pray for me. And I'm like, so then she's over at the post office, and Randy had changed the sign on the thing, and she turns around and looks on the sign, and there's my stinking name on the sign. And so at first I'm like, oh, thank you, Jesus. You're just at a place in life where you just need an encouragement in your faith. And like, this was like, what in the world? This is crazy. But then 2 days later, I'm like, wait a minute. Maybe she knew, or maybe she saw the name. And I'm trying to explain it away instead of just receiving this amazing blessing from God. God gives this woman who lives in Brimley a vision of me in kindergarten. She begins to pray for me. And then, like, are you kidding me? Like that, the God that we serve knows your life from beginning to end, and he knows the whole story, and he can speak anything he wants through anybody he wants into your life when he wants it. If you need something from him, he is totally capable of delivering exactly what you need. Please let us not walk in unbelief, Please let us believe that today Jesus can step into your situation and give you give you that picture from kindergarten, that word, that thing that you need to get through to the next day. So we've been studying through 2 Peter, and the imagery is really difficult because in the end, things aren't going to get easier. They're going to get harder, and then God is going to come and he's going to do these things that are challenging, more challenging yet even still. And I you're like, oh my gosh, like, really? But here's the thing. The encouragement from Peter and through all of Scripture is just like, remain faithful. Stand. Don't give way to the lies of the evil one and the chaos of this world, that God doesn't exist and your situation is hopeless and there's nothing that you can do about it and that he doesn't listen to you and you can pray, but that's the ceiling that you're praying to. No, Jesus is real, alive, and sitting on the throne. He hears every single word that you pray to him. And he's waiting. He's waiting for us to believe that he can and will do it. I want to close to remind us that he is the way to the chaos, that he has the word. He has the way for you. He can see the demonic, he can see the sickness, he can see the challenges, he can see the death, and he can bring life, and he can bring sight, and he can bring words, everything that we need for the next day. There's a passage in James that I want to close with because it's really practical when it comes to this. In James 5, says, "Is anyone among you in trouble? Let them pray. Is anyone happy? Let them sing songs of praise. Is anyone among you sick? Let them call the elders of the church to pray over them and anoint them, all in the name of the Lord. And the prayer offered in faith will make the sick person well. The Lord will raise them up. If they have sinned, they will be forgiven. Therefore, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective." What I hear in this passage is both the I'm sick and I need healing, and I may have sinned and allowed something into my life that's making me sick. And either way, we would like to be a place where you can come and be healed. That this place would be a place of healing and recovery for physical sickness, if that's what the Lord wills, but also spiritual sickness, if that's what we need. And so we all come in desperate need of God's grace this morning. And why don't we close together in singing the hymn number 56, "I Will Call Upon the Lord."